Sometimes children remember what adults spend years trying to forget. The crystal chandeliers above the Blackwood Foundation ballroom shimmered like frozen stars, casting soft golden light over designer gowns, polished tuxedos, and glasses of champagne that cost more than most families spent on groceries in a week. Outside, rain slid slowly down the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Manhattan Hotel, turning the city lights into blurred rivers of silver. Inside, everything felt controlled, elegant, predictable. Ethan Blackwood preferred it that way. At 41, the billionaire investor had built his entire life on control. Control over markets, control over emotions, control over grief, especially grief. Mr. Blackwood, the mayor just arrived. His assistant whispered beside him. Ethan nodded once without looking away from the crowd. His 6-year-old daughter sat quietly at their private table near the stage, swinging her small black shoes beneath the chair. Lily rarely smiled at public events anymore. She rarely spoke at all. Since her mother's death 4 years earlier, silence had become the child's safest place. Ethan noticed her tracing circles on the white tablecloth with her finger. The same nervous habit her mother used to have. The thought hit him harder than expected. He looked away immediately. Across the ballroom, servers moved like shadows between wealthy guests. Most people never noticed them. Ethan usually didn't either. But one waitress caught his attention for reasons he couldn't explain. She was standing near the piano, holding a silver tray of champagne flutes against her dark uniform. Tall, graceful, quiet. Her natural curls were pulled back neatly, revealing tired brown eyes that seemed older than the rest of her face. Unlike the other servers smiling politely for tips, she avoided attention completely. She moved carefully, almost as if she were trying not to disturb the air around her. Naomi Carter. Though Ethan didn't know her name yet, he only noticed something strange in the way Lily suddenly stopped moving. The little girl's eyes locked onto the waitress from across the room. Completely still, Ethan leaned closer. "Sweetheart?" he asked. Softly. Lily didn't answer. Her tiny fingers tightened around the edge of the chair. Then the waitress passed near their table carrying fresh champagne toward a group of investors. And everything changed. Lily stood up so suddenly her chair nearly tipped backward onto the marble floor. The loud scrape echoed through the ballroom. Conversations paused. Ethan turned quickly. "Lily!" But the little girl was already running. Past shocked guests, past waiters, past the string quartet playing softly near the stage, straight toward the shy waitress. Naomi froze when she saw the child racing toward her. The silver tray trembled slightly in her hands. Then Lily crashed into her waist, wrapping both tiny arms around her like she was afraid to let go. The tray slipped. Crystal glasses shattered across the marble floor. Gasps rippled through the ballroom. But Lily didn't care. She buried her face against Naomi's uniform and whispered one trembling word that turned the entire room silent. "Mama." Naomi stopped breathing. Ethan felt the blood drain from his face. For 4 years, his daughter had refused to call anyone that word. Not therapists, not teachers, not the kind women his family tried introducing into her life. No one. Yet now she clung to a complete stranger as tears rolled down her cheeks. "Mama," Lily whispered again, louder this time. "Why did you leave us?" No one in the ballroom moved. The shattered crystal sparkled across the marble floor like frozen rain, while Naomi Carter stood completely still, her hands trembling around the empty silver tray. Lily clung to her waist as if letting go would make her disappear again. Ethan Blackwood felt every eye in the room turn toward him. Billionaires, politicians, reporters. None of them mattered. All he could hear was his daughter's shaking voice pressed against the waitress's uniform. "Mama, please do not leave again." Naomi's lips parted slightly, but no words came out. Her brown eyes glistened with panic. Not guilt, not confusion. Something deeper, something painful. Ethan crossed the ballroom in long, controlled steps, though his heartbeat no longer felt controlled at all. "Lily," he said carefully, kneeling beside her. "Sweetheart, look at me." But Lily only held Naomi tighter. Ethan noticed the waitress instinctively placing one gentle hand on the little girl's hair. Slow strokes. Soft. Familiar. The exact same way his late wife used to calm Lily during thunderstorms. The realization sent something cold through his chest. Naomi seemed to notice it too because she quickly pulled her hand away, as if she had crossed a line she never meant to touch. "I am sorry, sir," she whispered quietly. Her voice carried the warmth of velvet and exhaustion at the same time. "I did not mean to upset her." Ethan stared at her face for the first time. Really stared. There was nothing glamorous about her appearance. Her black uniform was simple, her shoes worn at the edges from long shifts. But there was a strange calmness in her expression even while the entire ballroom watched her like a scandal unfolding in real time. Lily suddenly looked up with tears running down her cheeks. "Daddy, it is her." Ethan swallowed hard. "What do you mean?" "The song lady," Lily whispered. Naomi froze again. Ethan noticed it immediately. The tiny change in her breathing. The fear behind her eyes. "Lily," he said gently. "What song?" The child looked confused that adults did not understand. "The humming song. The one Mommy used to sing." Silence swallowed the ballroom again. For years ago, after Amelia Blackwood died from a sudden illness, Lily had stopped sleeping through the night. Some evenings Ethan would hear his daughter crying softly through the baby monitor until sunrise. But there was one thing that always calmed her. A lullaby Amelia used to hum under her breath. No lyrics. Just melody. Ethan never learned it himself. He had been too busy back then. Too distracted by business meetings and quarterly reports and believing there would always be more time. Regret tasted bitter even years later. Naomi slowly stepped backward, trying to create distance. "I should clean this up," she murmured, lowering her eyes toward the broken glasses. "Please excuse me." But Lily grabbed her hand before she could move. Tiny fingers. Tight grip. "Do not go." The words were so small they almost broke something inside. "Ethan." Naomi looked down at the little girl, and for the first time her carefully controlled expression cracked completely. Pain flashed across her face so quickly most people would have missed it. Ethan did not. Then, quietly, almost without realizing it, Naomi began humming. Softly, barely above a whisper. 3 notes. Then 4. Ethan stopped breathing. The melody drifted through the ballroom like a ghost from another life. Lily's shoulders relaxed instantly against Naomi's side. And across the room, an older woman dropped her wine glass in shock because she recognized the lullaby too. Amelia Blackwood's mother. The entire ballroom seemed to forget how to breathe. Amelia Blackwood's mother stood near the stage with trembling hands pressed against her chest, staring at Naomi as though she had seen a ghost step out of the past. The broken wine glass near her feet spilled slowly across the marble floor, dark red beneath the chandelier light. Ethan turned toward his mother-in-law in confusion. "You know that song too?" he asked quietly. Eleanor Blackwood could not answer immediately. Her pale eyes remained fixed on Naomi's face. "That melody?" she whispered finally, her voice shaking. "Amelia used to hum it when Lily was sick." Naomi lowered her gaze at once. Almost guilty, almost afraid. Ethan noticed every small movement now. The way her fingers tightened slightly around the tray. The way she stepped back whenever attention landed on her. Most people moved toward wealth and power like flowers leaning toward sunlight. Naomi Carter seemed desperate to disappear from it. Lily still held her hand tightly. "She knows Mommy?" the little girl said softly, looking up at her father with complete certainty. Ethan forced himself to remain calm even though nothing about tonight felt calm anymore. "Lily," he said gently, "we do not know that." "Ido." The child's voice was small but firm. Naomi swallowed hard. "Sir, I think your daughter is confused." But even as she said the words, her voice cracked slightly at the end. Ethan heard it. Eleanor heard it too. The older woman slowly approached Naomi with tears gathering in her eyes. "Where did you learn that lullaby?" she asked quietly. Naomi hesitated. 1 second. 2. Long enough for Ethan to notice. "My grandmother used to sing it," she answered softly. "I heard it growing up." Eleanor stared at her in silence. Then she shook her head slowly. No, Naomi's eyes widened slightly. Excuse me? That lullaby was written by Amelia herself when Lily was born. Ethan felt the room tilt beneath him. Naomi looked completely still now. Too still. Like someone trapped between running away and falling apart. That is impossible, Ethan said carefully. Eleanor nodded faintly without taking her eyes off Naomi. Amelia never published it. She only sang it around family. Lily suddenly tugged Naomi's hand again. You smell like her too. The words hit harder than anyone expected. Naomi closed her eyes briefly as if the sentence physically hurt. Ethan remembered that scent immediately. Vanilla and jasmine. Amelia's favorite perfume. One bottle still sat untouched in their Manhattan penthouse bathroom because Ethan could never bring himself to throw it away. Naomi quickly stepped backward again. I really should return to work, she whispered. Please excuse me. This time Ethan gently stopped her. Not aggressively, just enough to make her pause. Who are you? He asked quietly. Naomi looked at him directly for the first time that night. Her brown eyes carried exhaustion deeper than age. The kind people earned surviving difficult years in silence. I am just a waitress, Mr. Blackwood. No, Eleanor whispered before Ethan could answer. You are not. Across the ballroom, guests pretended not to stare while secretly watching every second unfold. The string quartet had stopped playing entirely now. Even the rain against the windows sounded louder somehow. Naomi carefully removed Lily's tiny fingers from her hand. Your daughter misses her mother, she said softly. Children sometimes connect memories to familiar things. A voice, a song, a scent. Ethan wanted to believe that explanation. It sounded rational. Safe, but something inside him refused to settle. Because Lily had not looked confused when she called Naomi Mama. She had looked relieved, as if she had finally found someone she had been searching for a very long time. The gala ended early after that. Not because anyone announced it, but because the atmosphere had changed too completely for expensive conversations and polite laughter to survive. Guests left in hushed whispers beneath the chandeliers, while hotel staff quietly cleaned shattered crystal from the marble floor. Outside, rain continued falling over Manhattan in soft silver lines. Ethan Blackwood stood near the entrance fastening Lily's coat with slow, careful movements. His daughter looked exhausted, her small body heavy with sleepiness, but her eyes kept drifting toward the ballroom hallway where Naomi had disappeared nearly 20 minutes earlier. Daddy? Lily whispered softly. Is she gone? Ethan adjusted the scarf around her neck before answering. Probably home by now. Lily lowered her eyes immediately. The disappointment on her tiny face hurt more than Ethan expected. For years. 4 years of therapists, schools, travel, gifts, private tutors, child specialists. Yet he had not seen this much emotion from his daughter in months. And somehow one quiet waitress had reached her in less than 5 minutes. It did not make sense. Ethan hated things that did not make sense. Behind him, Eleanor slowly approached carrying her coat over one arm. The older woman looked pale beneath the golden lobby lights. You are thinking the same thing I am, she said quietly. Ethan exhaled slowly. I am trying not to. Eleanor glanced toward the empty ballroom. That girl knew Amelia somehow. Or Lily projected memories onto a stranger. Do not lie to yourself, Ethan. Her voice remained gentle, but firm. You saw her face when she heard the lullaby. Ethan looked away toward the rain-covered windows. He had seen it. That was the problem. Naomi had not reacted like someone confused. She had reacted like someone caught. Before he could answer, Lily suddenly tugged his sleeve. Can we say goodbye? Ethan hesitated only a moment before nodding. Together they walked back through the service hallway behind the ballroom where the noise of the gala faded into quiet echoes and rolling carts. The bright luxury of the event disappeared there. Nos chandeliers. No orchestra. Only fluorescent lights humming softly above industrial gray walls. Ethan noticed Lily holding his hand tighter than usual as they reached the kitchen area. Staff members moved quickly around them cleaning trays and stacking dishes before midnight. But Naomi was nowhere in sight. Then Ethan heard it. Humming. Soft. Distant. The same melody again. Lily's face lit up instantly. She is here. Ethan followed the sound down a narrow hallway leading toward the employee lockers. The humming stopped abruptly the moment Naomi noticed them standing there. She had changed out of her uniform jacket and was placing folded aprons into a canvas bag. Under the harsh hallway lights, she looked younger somehow. More tired too. Her curls framed her face loosely now, and Ethan noticed faint shadows beneath her eyes like someone who had not slept properly in years. Naomi looked startled to see them. Mr. Blackwood. Her voice dropped almost immediately when she saw Lily run toward her again. This time Naomi knelt down instinctively before the little girl could even reach her. Like she already knew what Lily needed. Ethan noticed that too. Are you leaving? Lily asked quietly. Naomi smiled softly, though sadness lingered behind it. My shift is over. Lily looked down at the floor. Can I hug you again? Something fragile moved across Naomi's face. Of course. She opened her arms slowly, and Lily hugged her so tightly Ethan felt something twist painfully inside his chest. Naomi closed her eyes for only a second while holding the child. 1 second. But in that second, she looked less like a waitress and more like someone remembering a life she had lost. Then Ethan noticed the silver bracelet on Naomi's wrist again beneath the fluorescent lights. Tiny engraved music notes lined the edge. His breathing stopped, because he remembered buying that bracelet for Amelia himself on their first anniversary. Ethan stared at the silver bracelet on Naomi's wrist as though the entire hallway had suddenly narrowed around it. Tiny engraved music notes curved delicately across the metal beneath the fluorescent lights. He remembered standing inside a small jewelry store on Madison Avenue 11 years earlier while Amelia laughed at how seriously he compared bracelets like business contracts. You always overthink everything, she had teased softly before kissing his cheek. Ethan had not thought about that memory in years. Now it returned so sharply it almost hurt. Naomi noticed where he was looking and instinctively pulled her sleeve downward to cover the bracelet. Too late. Where did you get that? Ethan asked quietly. Naomi stood slowly, Lily still holding her hand. It was a gift. From who? The question came faster this time. Naomi hesitated. Someone important to me. Ethan felt his pulse tightening again. That bracelet belonged to my wife. Silence. Naomi lowered her eyes immediately. The hallway suddenly felt much colder than before. Around them, hotel employees quietly avoided looking in their direction while pretending to continue working. Eleanor stepped closer, her face pale beneath the harsh lighting. Naomi, she said softly, please tell us the truth. Naomi swallowed carefully before answering. I think it is late. Lily should go home. But Lily tightened her grip again. No, her tiny voice echoed through the hallway with surprising force. I want her to come with us. Ethan looked down at his daughter in shock. Since Amelia's death, Lily refused almost everyone who entered their lives. Nannies lasted weeks before she withdrew from them completely. Therapists described her as emotionally closed off. Yet now she looked at Naomi with absolute trust shining through exhausted eyes. Naomi crouched gently to Lily's level. Sweetheart, your father is worried. Are you worried too? Lily asked quietly. Naomi paused for a second too long before answering. A little. The honesty in her voice seemed to calm the child immediately. Ethan noticed that too. Naomi never spoke to Lily like an adult trying to manage a grieving child. She spoke to her like someone who understood grief personally. Ethan crossed his arms slowly. You knew Amelia. It was no longer a question. Naomi looked toward the rain-covered service door at the end of the hallway instead of answering him directly. Your wife was very kind, she whispered. Eleanor inhaled sharply beside him. Ethan stared at Naomi carefully now, piecing together impossible details one by one. The lullaby, the bracelet, the perfume, Lily's reaction. None of it felt accidental anymore. How did you meet her? He asked quietly. Naomi's fingers tightened around the canvas bag hanging from her shoulder. Years ago. That is not an answer. Her eyes finally lifted toward his. Tired eyes. Guarded eyes. But intelligent. Strong. Some memories belong to people who are gone, she said softly. Sometimes it is better to leave them there. Ethan almost responded immediately, but Lily suddenly yawned against Naomi's side, her small body visibly fighting sleep now. Naomi brushed a curl gently away from the little girl's forehead without thinking. Again, the movement mirrored Amelia so naturally it unsettled Ethan deep inside. Lily leaned against her shoulder instantly. Safe. Comfortable. Home. Ethan felt a strange ache in his chest watching it. Eleanor quietly wiped tears from beneath her glasses. She has not leaned on anyone like that in years, the older woman whispered. Naomi looked down at Lily with visible sadness crossing her face. She misses her mother very much. How would you know that? Ethan asked before he could stop himself. Naomi froze, just slightly, but enough. Then Lily murmured sleepily against her shoulder. Mama used to hum when it rained too. Naomi closed her eyes, only for a second, but when she opened them again, Ethan saw tears shining there for the first time. Real tears, carefully hidden. Quiet tears from someone carrying memories too heavy to speak aloud. The drive home through Manhattan felt quieter than any night Ethan Blackwood could remember. Rain slid across the windows of the black SUV, while city lights blurred into streaks of gold and silver beyond the glass. Lily had fallen asleep halfway downtown, curled beneath a cashmere blanket in the back seat with her cheek resting against Naomi's borrowed scarf. Ethan glanced at her through the rearview mirror for the third time in less than 10 minutes. His daughter looked peaceful. Not distracted. Not pretending. Peaceful. He had almost forgotten what that looked like. Naomi sat beside the window with both hands folded tightly in her lap. She had agreed to ride with them only because Lily refused to let go of her hand without tears. Even now, while sleeping, the child still held one tiny finger wrapped around Naomi's sleeve. Eleanor sat silently in the front passenger seat staring out into the rain as though trapped inside old memories of her own. No one spoke for several blocks. Then Ethan finally broke the silence. You knew Amelia before she became sick. Naomi kept her eyes on the passing lights outside. Yes. The answer came softly, honest this time. Ethan tightened his jaw slightly. How? Naomi hesitated. We met at a volunteer program in Brooklyn. Doing what? Music therapy. Ethan frowned faintly. Amelia never mentioned you. Naomi lowered her gaze. There were many things your wife kept private. Something about the sentence unsettled him immediately. Not because it sounded accusatory, because it sounded sad. The car turned onto Fifth Avenue while soft jazz played quietly through the speakers. Naomi seemed uncomfortable inside the luxury vehicle, like someone borrowed into a world that never belonged to her. Ethan noticed the way she carefully avoided touching anything expensive. The way she apologized quietly when a raindrop from her sleeve landed on the leather seat. Small things. Invisible things most people ignored. But Ethan had built his fortune studying details others missed. And tonight every detail about Naomi Carter felt important. Why did Lily recognize you? He asked quietly. Naomi closed her eyes briefly before answering. I do not think she recognized me. Then what happened tonight? Naomi finally turned toward him. Her voice remained calm, but her eyes looked tired enough to collapse. Children remember feelings adults teach themselves to forget. Ethan stared at her in silence after that, because deep down he knew she was right. Lily had spent years surrounded by specialists trying to fix her grief with schedules and exercises and careful conversations. But tonight she had simply run toward someone who felt familiar to her broken heart. The SUV slowly pulled beneath the covered entrance of Ethan's penthouse building overlooking Central Park. Rain tapped softly against the roof while the doorman hurried forward with umbrellas. Naomi immediately glanced toward the sleeping child. I should go now. But before Ethan could answer, Lily stirred awake in the back seat. Her sleepy eyes opened halfway. No, Naomi looked back gently. Sweetheart, it is late. Lily's lip trembled instantly. Please do not leave. Ethan watched Naomi's face carefully then. He expected discomfort. Panic maybe. Instead, he saw heartbreak, quiet and immediate, the kind that appeared too naturally to be fake. Naomi slowly reached out and brushed damp curls from Lily's forehead. "I am not leaving forever," she whispered softly. Lily studied her for a long moment through sleepy eyes. "Promise." Naomi paused. Ethan noticed it again. That tiny hesitation whenever promises appeared. "Promise," she whispered finally. Lily relaxed instantly against the seat again. Then, barely awake, she murmured something so quietly Ethan almost missed it. "Mommy used to say promises softly too." Naomi looked away toward the rain-covered window immediately. But not before Ethan saw tears sliding silently down her face for the second time that night. Naomi insisted on leaving after Lily finally fell asleep upstairs. She stood near the elevator doors in the Blackwood penthouse lobby with her canvas bag hanging from one shoulder while rainwater still shimmered faintly on the edges of her curls. Ethan had offered to call a driver 3 separate times. She refused everyone politely. "The subway is fine," she said softly. Ethan stared at her in disbelief. "At 1:30 in the morning?" Naomi gave a small tired shrug. "I have done it before." Of course she had. Ethan suddenly realized there were entire worlds inside New York City he had stopped seeing years ago. Worlds where people worked double shifts then rode trains home exhausted while men like him signed million-dollar contracts over imported wine. Naomi pressed the elevator button quietly. Neither of them spoke for several seconds. The penthouse behind them remained silent except for distant thunder rolling across Manhattan. Finally, Ethan broke the silence. "Lily has not slept peacefully in almost a year." Naomi lowered her eyes. "She misses feeling safe. And somehow you made her feel that in one night." Naomi did not answer immediately. When she finally spoke, her voice sounded fragile beneath the soft lobby lighting. "Children know when someone truly sees them." Ethan folded his arms slowly. "You speak like someone who has spent a lot of time around grieving children." Naomi's fingers tightened slightly around her bag strap. "Sometimes life teaches people things they never planned to learn." Again with the careful answers, the half-truths. Ethan was beginning to realize Naomi spoke like someone constantly measuring how much of herself was safe to reveal. The elevator doors opened softly with a chime. Naomi stepped inside, then paused when Ethan suddenly spoke again. "Why did Amelia give you the bracelet?" Naomi froze completely. Silence stretched between them while rain tapped softly against the penthouse windows behind Ethan. Finally, Naomi looked up at him. Real emotion moved through her eyes this time. Pain, memory, exhaustion. "Because she knew I would never sell it," she whispered. The doors began sliding closed. Ethan stepped forward instinctively. "Wait." Naomi pressed the open button before the doors fully shut. "What?" she asked quietly. Ethan stared at her for a long moment. Then he asked the question that had been burning inside him since the ballroom. "Where were you when Amelia died?" Naomi looked like all the air had left her lungs. Her eyes dropped toward the elevator floor. For several seconds she said nothing at all. Then softly, almost too softly to hear, she answered, "Right beside her." Ethan felt the world stop. Naomi looked up again quickly as though regretting the confession immediately. "Good night, Mr. Blackwood." The elevator doors closed before he could speak again. Ethan stood frozen in the silent lobby staring at his own reflection in the polished metal doors long after the elevator disappeared. Right beside her. The sentence echoed through his mind all night. Because Ethan had not been there when Amelia died. He had been in London closing a merger deal worth nearly $2 billion while his wife slipped away in a Manhattan hospital room surrounded by machines and rain against the windows. He remembered arriving too late. Remembered Lily asleep in Eleanor's arms. Remembered the unbearable silence inside Amelia's hospital room after everyone else left. For years Ethan convinced himself there had been nothing he could do differently. Business required sacrifice. Responsibility demanded difficult choices. But now a stranger stood carrying pieces of his wife's memory more intimately than he did. A lullaby. A bracelet.
Final moments.
Ethan slowly loosened his tie while thunder rolled outside again. Upstairs, Lily slept peacefully for the first time in months, holding Naomi's borrowed scarf against her cheek. And somewhere beneath the rain-covered skyline of New York City, the quiet waitress who knew too much about his dead wife disappeared into the night alone. The next morning, Manhattan woke beneath low gray clouds and streets still wet from overnight rain. Ethan Blackwood stood alone inside his office overlooking Central Park with a cup of untouched coffee growing cold beside him. Naomi Carter's name glowed softly across the private investigation file on his tablet screen. Age 29. Current employment at the Langford Hotel. No criminal record. No social media accounts. No close family listed. The lack of information bothered him more than secrets themselves. People always left traces behind. Naomi seemed to move through the world like someone trying not to exist loudly enough to be remembered. Ethan tapped the screen again. One detail finally appeared from nearly 5 years earlier. Volunteer coordinator. St. Catherine's Hospice Care Center. His chest tightened immediately. That was where Amelia spent her final weeks. Ethan slowly sat down without realizing he was doing it. For years he avoided reading anything connected to those last days because guilt made every memory feel unbearable. But now Naomi's face stood in the center of all of it. The humming. The bracelet. The way Lily relaxed against her like she had returned home after years of searching. A quiet knock interrupted his thoughts. Eleanor stepped inside, carrying Lily's backpack over one shoulder. She refuses to go to school. Ethan rubbed his jaw tiredly. Why? Eleanor gave him a look that already knew the answer. Seconds later, Lily walked slowly into the office wearing her Navy school uniform with Naomi's scarf wrapped carefully around her small shoulders. Ethan stared at it in silence. Sweetheart, he said gently. That belongs to Miss Carter. Lily nodded. I know. Then why are you wearing it? The little girl looked down at the scarf in her hands. Because it smells safe. Ethan closed his eyes briefly. Children always found the simplest words for the heaviest truths. Eleanor quietly placed a hand on his shoulder before leaving them alone. Lily climbed into the chair across from Ethan's desk, swinging her legs softly beneath her. Daddy? Yes. Was Mommy alone when she died? The question hit him harder than any boardroom negotiation ever could. Ethan stared at his daughter without speaking for several seconds. Why would you ask that? Lily played nervously with the scarf fringe. Because Miss Naomi looked sad when you talked about it. Ethan felt something tighten painfully inside his chest again. He leaned back slowly in his chair. Your mother was not alone, he answered carefully. Grandma Eleanor was there. Lily looked up immediately. And Naomi too. Not a question. A statement. Ethan studied his daughter in silence. How do you know that? Lily shrugged softly. I just do. The room fell quiet again except for rain tapping lightly against the enormous office windows. Then Ethan made a decision he had spent 4 years avoiding. He opened the bottom drawer of his desk and removed a worn leather journal wrapped carefully in tissue paper. Amelia's journal. He had not touched it since the funeral. His fingers hesitated briefly before opening the final pages. Notes filled Amelia's elegant handwriting across the paper. Hospital thoughts. Fears. Tiny memories about Lily. Ethan swallowed hard reading words written by the woman he loved while he sat thousands of miles away signing contracts in London. Then suddenly one name appeared near the bottom of a page. Naomi. Ethan stopped breathing. He leaned closer to the paper. Naomi stayed with Lily tonight while I could not stop shaking. She hummed softly until my little girl finally slept. I do not know what I would do without her. Ethan stared at the sentence while the world around him seemed to disappear. Upstairs, thunder rolled softly above Manhattan. And for the first time since Amelia died, Ethan realized the stranger his daughter called Mama had never truly been a stranger at all. Rain fell softly over Manhattan 3 nights later when Ethan finally found Naomi again. Not at the hotel. Not in some dramatic moment beneath chandeliers or crowded ballrooms. He found her exactly where Amelia's journal said she would be. St. Catherine's Children's Hospice Center in Brooklyn. The old brick building stood quietly between narrow streets glowing beneath wet streetlights while traffic hummed softly in the distance. Ethan sat inside his parked car for nearly 10 minutes before stepping out into the cold evening air. Through one of the windows, he could see Naomi sitting beside a small piano in the children's common room. No makeup, no uniform, just a gray sweater, loose curls falling around her shoulders, and tired eyes carrying impossible gentleness as she hummed softly to a little boy sleeping beneath a blanket. Ethan stopped walking. For the first time in years, he saw a version of wealth that had nothing to do with money. Naomi noticed him only after covering the child carefully and stepping into the hallway. Surprise flickered across her face, followed quickly by quiet resignation. "You read the journal," she said softly. Ethan nodded once. Neither of them moved for several seconds. The hallway smelled faintly of tea, old books, and rain carried in from outside. Finally, Ethan spoke. "You stayed with Amelia." Naomi lowered her eyes. "Yes. Why did she never tell me about you?" Naomi gave a sad smile that barely lasted a second. "Because your wife knew you." Ethan frowned slightly. "What does that mean?" Naomi leaned gently against the hallway wall. "Amelia said you carried guilt too easily. She worried that if you knew how bad things became near the end, you would never forgive yourself for being away." The words landed quietly, but they broke something open inside him anyway. Ethan looked down at his hands. Hands that built billion-dollar companies. Hands that signed contracts fast enough to change markets overnight. Yet he had not held Amelia's hand when she needed him most. Naomi seemed to read the thought crossing his face because her voice softened further. "She did not blame you." Ethan laughed once under his breath. Not because anything felt funny, because grief sometimes sounded like disbelief. "I blamed myself enough for both of us." Silence settled gently between them. Then Naomi reached into her bag and removed a folded piece of paper worn carefully at the edges. "She asked me to give you this someday," Naomi whispered. Ethan stared at the letter in shock. "You kept it all these years?" Naomi nodded slowly. "I promised her I would wait until you were ready to hear it." Ethan unfolded the letter carefully with trembling fingers. Amelia's handwriting curved softly across the page. "Ethan, if you are reading this, then Naomi finally decided you stopped running from your own heart. Please do not be angry with her for staying away. I asked her to. Lily trusted Naomi before she trusted anyone else, and deep down I think she always will. Some people enter our lives loudly. Others arrive quietly and become part of the family before we even notice. If Lily ever calls Naomi Mama someday, do not correct her too quickly. Children understand love faster than adults do." Ethan stopped reading because tears blurred the page completely. Across the hallway, Naomi looked away respectfully as though giving grief privacy mattered more than curiosity. Ethan wiped his eyes slowly before looking up at her again. "Why did you never come back?" Naomi's answer came almost immediately this time. "Because I was afraid Lily would remember me." Ethan stared at her in silence. Then quietly, honestly, for the first time in years, he said the words he should have spoken long ago. "Thank you for loving them when I did not know how." Naomi's eyes filled instantly. Outside, rain continued falling softly over Brooklyn, while somewhere upstairs a little girl's laughter echoed faintly through the hospice halls. And for the first time since Amelia died, Ethan Blackwood no longer felt alone inside his grief.